and welcome to Your Health Reclaimed. This is your host, DrPND, and today's podcast, we are going to discuss alcohol. It is a sort of a dreaded subject and a sensitive topic for most people. And I always get asked the question about alcohol. So I'm going to give you my personal and professional opinion, what I've experienced with it, with my patients, with my clients, and also, what research says and what is shown in regards to optimal health. I'm going to approach this from a, holistic functional medical medicine standpoint in regards to, people that would like to experience optimal health and are dealing with some kind of, chronic issue that they are trying to address, and how alcohol plays a role in the ability for the person to be able to address those issues. So this podcast is a general explanation of alcohol and why I am against it and why my reasoning against that. I would like to also put things in perspective in a proper frame of reference of, why I feel the way I feel, why I'm against it, and I don't really, or I should say I advise strongly against it. What are some of the exceptions? And from, again, what point of reference I'm coming to. So again, this podcast is mostly for people that would like to achieve or try to achieve as optimal of health as possible based on their current situation, their, geographical location, their ability, their financial ability, obviously, their mental, emotional, and physical limits, and their genetic potential. So again, this is for people that would like to really, go after optimal health. In addition, when it comes to alcohol, this podcast too is also going to be geared towards people that are dealing with some kind of chronic ailment and they are trying to address it. So just the bottom line, before I begin real quick, is that I do strongly advise against ethanol consumption. Ethanol is the human form of alcohol that people consume. Okay, we don't consume methanol or butanol, obviously. So when it comes to anybody trying to address chronic issues, alcohol has got to be eliminated without fail. The stronger, the deeper rooted, the more chronic the condition is, there is absolutely zero tolerance when it comes to consumption of alcohol. Okay, that's just a fact. Research shows it. That has been my personal professional experience. Many of my colleagues absolutely feel the same way. So if you're dealing with a chronic issue, alcohol has got to be eliminated completely without fail, at least for the time being, while you are healing and, until you really achieve a state of health that you're satisfied with. Thereafter, depending on what it is, you might be able to go back to consumption of ethanol within limit and within reason based on your personal condition, okay? And what that is, I can never tell you because everybody's completely individual. Somebody can get away with a glass of wine or two every night, or perhaps even a shot or two of, whiskey a night. And some people can, once a week can be too much for them to set them back for days, even after they're healed. So that's different. Now, when it comes to somebody who is healthy, who is, again, generally healthy, that have no ailments that they're struggling with, ethanol and alcohol consumption is a very large part of their social life. That it can be tricky because if alcohol is a massive part of your social life, and I'm talking a positive aspect, I'm not talking about you drowning your sorrows and you're drinking because you're miserable, or you have drinking buddies that you guys are drinking together because you guys are miserable and sit there and gossip about your miserable lives. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about somebody having a blast, having a genuine great time with friends and family and really thriving. Ethanol, again, within reason, might be able to outweigh the risks of it, okay? Because a lot of people quote the blue zones. And a lot of people quote, well, here are the studies and, example has shown of a lot of the centenarians, the blue zones that are people in general, health and longevity, that there can be a pattern of regular alcohol consumption. First of all, what they need to understand is those people are living long or they are thriving because of alcohol consumption, despite of it. There are many, many other more important factors such as nutrition, stress, especially how those people think, how they've been brought up and how they live currently, including against social engagement, which is extremely important. That is driving those awesome negative risk factors for longevity, as opposed to a positive risk factor, something like smoking or drinking. So the body can much more tolerate something like that when everything else is great. Again, somebody who has a positive mental outlook, they have great social positive surrounding from time of their childhood all the way to adulthood. He has a lot of friends and family, a lot of love. Basically, then are not struggling with the loneliness epidemic that we have here in the States, at least. That is huge. Add low stress life in general to that. Add security to that. Add good quality, high nutrient dense foods to that. Add again lower stress and peace and calmness and joy, generally speaking, in life. That means sleep is going to be great or very, very good at that. So all these are massive, massive, good, healthy qualities that contribute to health and longevity. And ultimately, in holistic medicine, holistic health, that is the whole point of holism, which is physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual health. So again, it's not because of alcohol consumption, it's despite of it. So that is the risk factor that you have to really weigh in to see if the risk of consumption of alcohol by far outweighs, the benefits of alcohol far outweigh the risks. So if you're having a few drinks with really good friends and you guys have a great time once or twice a week during the weekend, and everything else is great, then perhaps you definitely can get away with that, and that's an important part of your life. Especially if your blood pressure is normal, everything else is normal. When you're thriving, there's really no issues that anybody can point out or yourself. Then I'd say, go for it. Absolutely, that's you're doing fine with it. The reality is many people are not, and especially in the United States. So if you're struggling with issues, whether it be weight, whether it be hormonal dysregulation, lipids like cholesterol, thyroid issues, sleep, general diabetes, especially cardiovascular disease, and you're consuming alcohol, you can't afford to do that. You just have to stop until you're healing that. Or keep consuming it and understand that you are going to greatly exacerbate the problems that you have. And eventually you're going to succumb to the consequences of alcohol. So that's my take on alcohol. I'm going to keep this episode really short, but real quick, I want to go over and give you kind of a bottom line, very general understanding of what ethanol actually does to the body. There are a lot of studies. The latest one that I can find was actually here in the end of March of this year, 2024, from the American College of Cardiology. And alcohol raises heart disease risk, particularly among women. That is extremely true. When I was in my country last year and the previous year, I did some digging and some good research, spoke with a couple of physicians. One of them was a prominent cardiologist in Sofia, Bulgaria. He's also the lead top professor there at Sofia American College of Medicine, and he has done a lot of studies and a lot of with alcohol, and he is absolutely against that. He absolutely, because it's not deniable that alcohol will cause heart disease and greatly exacerbate it if you already have it. So he definitely advises against that. But there's a lot of studies. I'm not going to go into that and point those studies out. You can look them up yourself. So real cool. First of all, alcoholism and addiction. Okay, that is something that you see a lot. It is absolutely pervasive. It can be obviously the ultimate, raging alcoholic that they just crash and burn, and all the way down to your closet alcoholic or functioning alcoholic, that everything seems to be quote unquote fine, but nonetheless they're addicted. So alcohol, first of all, is detoxified by an enzyme, ADH, called, stands for alcohol dehydrogenase. Okay, that's the major ethanol metabolism system in the body. The development of alcoholic liver disease, for instance, is absolutely mostly due to malnutrition that is caused by alcohol. And that's something we're going to talk about. Alcohol use will impair the intestinal barrier and causes intestinal permeability, aka leaky gut. Again, that's something I deal with all the time. So if somebody has GI issues, which most people do, you without fail have to remove alcohol. Okay, there's no ifs about that. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people do really well. The epithelial cells of the GI begin to change real quickly, and so symptoms begin to disappear really quickly if somebody's following protocol. But what ends up happening is they start feeling really good within days, even weeks, like really well, and they think that they're doing well and that they can afford to take a hit. So they'll go get drunk. And once they're drunk, come down like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 alcoholic beverages, just one time, one scenario, and that can set them back weeks again, right from the start. And I see this all the time. That's why I tell people you cannot afford to do that. In addition, bacterial products, when you have intestinal permeability, will penetrate the impaired intestinal barrier and will cause central inflammation by default. They'll impair the hepatic circulation of the bile acids, and alcohol use will cause shortage of vital nutrients such as thiamine or B1, which everybody who deals with that, this is one of the first B vitamins that gets depleted very quickly. In the tissues, ethanol is metabolized what's called to acetaldehyde. It's mainly by alcohol dehydrogenase enzyme and the cytochrome P450 that is called. Intracellular generation of those free radicals and their depletion, of the antioxidant glutathione, are involved in the cellular pathogenic events that are really caused by alcohol, and you see it every single time. Chronic alcohol consumption will also result in multiple peripheral and central nervous system dysfunctions. Some are due to the direct action of alcohol or its derivatives. Others are just induced by the vitamin deficiencies that are associated with alcoholism. So alcohol-induced neuropathy, okay? Guyatt-Wernicke syndrome, Korsakoff syndrome, alcoholic dementia, hepatic encephalopathy, alcoholic epilepsy. And if you don't have a personal experience with somebody, you don't know anybody directly, it's not going to take much to look around and find somebody who has suffered of those things. If you get a chance to talk to a neurologist, you'll be amazed at what they'll tell you, how much damage they see from alcohol. Even back when we used to have our facility and we did, fitness and nutrition and, training. I can't tell you how many people used to come to us from Alcoholics Anonymous, and they were severely addicted to sugar, caffeine, particularly sugar. And you see the damage. You see the neurological deficits, such as strength, power, production, coordination, and balance were huge, especially when it comes to unilateral movements. I've seen people that literally can't stop shaking. Those doctors tell that's permanent damage. Did they improve? Did they definitely do better? Absolutely, but nonetheless, these things didn't go away. It's really sad. And again, alcohol can damage. Okay, it might not be now, it might not be a little bit later, but eventually it's going to get you regardless of what. Again, past and current research indicates that alcohol affects the levels, of many hormones and neurotransmitters in the body and the brain. It's just a fact. Among these are the very important ones, such as dopamine and cortisol. Okay, everybody knows those. These are important stress-reducing, feel-good hormones. So alcohol can boost these neurotransmitters temporarily, artificially, but often in ways that will create imbalances and end up depressing our ability, actually, for those hormones to be naturally elevated and produced later on. Another key neurotransmitter that gets very heavily affected by alcohol is serotonin. Okay, low serotonin will result in numerous conditions that can predispose to alcoholism, including anxiety, depression, mood swings, impulsive behaviors, irritability, low self-esteem, sleep issues, post-traumatic stress disorders. With sleep issues, alcohol is a depressant. Obese people who have sleep apnea, which most obese people do, it really exacerbates sleep apnea severe. I saw that with my own father. It was horrible, and ultimately that's what causes the mix of severe heart damage. The production of serotonin also requires certain amino acids, especially tryptophan, vitamin D, iron, magnesium, calcium, vitamin C, and the B vitamins, among many others. So alcohol temporarily will raise serotonin levels artificially, but at the same time, it will deplete these nutrients, okay, especially thiamine and B6 and folate needed to produce serotonin naturally. And it does so very quickly with regular ethanol consumption. Trauma can definitely affect natural serotonin levels without fail. So if someone starts with trauma, childhood trauma, kind of PTSD, whatever they might have seen, which a lot of alcoholics actually do have, a lot of people have, by default affects many transmitters in a negative way already. So adding chronic alcohol consumption to that, it just is like adding jet fuel to a raging fire. That is why grief counselors, for example, will very strongly advise not to consume any alcohol while the person is counseling and going through grief or, trauma therapy with psychological, whether it's chronic or psychological trauma of any kind, acute, such as, losing obviously, a spouse, child, divorce, a soldier watching, their, bodies being killed in action, whatever. These are obviously severe forms of trauma, but they'll very heavily advise against the consumption of alcohol just for this reason, because it really, really messes with neuroendocrine hormones and neurotransmitters. Alcohol has a very complex effect, which we're not going to go into here, but ethanol basically is a small molecule. Okay, basic, organic chemistry, we understand alcohol has a very small molecule, and that gives the ability basically to interact with many neurotransmitter systems in the brain and the nervous system in general. So this makes the action of alcohol a lot more complex than that of a large molecule, for example, such as an opiate or even amphetamine, which tend to stimulate only really one specific neurotransmitter, for instance. The neurotransmitters, natural neurotransmitters and chemicals that are very important here, I'm going to list them real quick. One of them is the GABA, GABA, stands for gamma aminobutyric acid. That is the chief inhibitory transmitter in the central nervous system. So its principal role is reducing excitability. Well, alcohol affects the GABA system in a similar manner to Valium, leading to relaxation and drowsiness. And that's why people like to consume it to come down after a stressful day at work. The problem is it's a temporary fix, and it keeps digging the grave deeper and deeper. It's like using a very high interest credit card. Okay, if you don't stop, you're going to end up paying a very heavy price interest at the moment. Dopamine is another one. Alcohol is particularly lethal toxin to the dopamine system. Okay, one really that attaches itself to dopamine, and when it does, it's this neurotransmitter that it just triggers compulsion. Okay, that's why you have a lot of issues with alcoholics being very compulsive. That is a big reason why, because it affects the dopamine system very, very directly and very efficiently. Endorphins, these are the feel-good, chemicals after exercise or some kind of, physical activity or excitement. People just feel good. The alcohol affects the endorphin system in a manner similar to opiates, kind of acting as a sort of a painkiller and giving an endorphin high. That's why alcohol is used very heavily in pre-anesthesia eras, especially in the battlefields, during wars. Again, causing issues to those endorphin systems, then being artificially overstimulated, and they get to a point that they can't do that naturally anymore, even with exercise. And if you remember a minute ago, I just told you, over the years we had alcoholics from AA, and even though they get a great workout, obviously they'll feel better by default. They'll never get this exercise high or those runners high that they would hope to get, and I could never figure out why. Back then I didn't know what I know now, but that was the reason ultimately. Another important chemical is the glutamate. So alcohol effects on the glutamate system lead to staggering slurred speech, memory blackouts, and an ability to really balance well. That too I've noticed many times with people when I used to train. Norepinephrine is another one. Alcohol causes the release of norepinephrine. This is also known as noradrenaline in the brain, and which is one reason why alcohol acts as a stimulant and not just only as a depressant, so it can act as both stimulant and a depressant. As a stimulant, alcohol preps you up, but as a depressant, alcohol can trigger depression. Yeah, it can be a downer, and it is a downer. I used to see seen that with people, and again, including my own, father. When he was in a good mood, alcohol gave him great energy, and made him really feel really, really good. He was pleasant to be around, and when he was struggling, had a bad time, alcohol just depressed him and get him down. He would just sit there quiet, miserable, really, stewing his own misery, whatever he was doing. I've seen that. I've seen that with friends. I've seen that with people over the years. It's not pleasant. Okay, just it's not, and ultimately it's damaging. Another hormone is the adrenaline. Everybody knows about the hormone. Alcohol causes the adrenal glands to release adrenaline. Okay, this is another reason why alcohol has a stimulant properties. The release of the adrenaline stimulates the fight or flight response, which can then cause for the calming, rest and digest adrenal cortex hormones, so it's a constant cycle and depletion. You stimulate artificially, then the rest and digest, parasympathetic adrenal cortex hormones have to kick in to be able to calm that down. It's a constant stimulation of adrenaline, which happens in spades when alcohol is combined, especially with coffee. So people that drink coffee and alcohol, it can give them a severely heightened effect. I think it's called Irish coffee. If anybody who's ever had it, they'll testify that they feel phenomenal for a while. I mean, they have the liquid courage, and man, they just go through a wall, and they feel like they can run a marathon because you're getting a double hit from adrenaline and cortisol stimulation, which ultimately can and does to many people lead to adrenal exhaustion. Ultimately. Thiamine deficiency, B1, that's a huge one. Okay, while thiamine deficiency is often as a result of chronic alcohol misuse, obviously things like chronic infections, poor nutrition, especially malabsorption from leaky gut, it really can lower B1 by default. And then again, adding chronic ethanol consumption to that, it's just a vicious cycle that doesn't stop, and one thiamine gets severely depleted very, very quickly, very effectively. And a lot of times it's almost impossible to really overcompensate while you're consuming alcohol and eating poor food, even with supplementation. Thiamine and alcohol addiction, again, that thiamine, it's frequently recommended, obviously, given to people who struggle with alcohol addiction. As alcohol consumption, again, reduces its absorption of the vitamin in the gastrointestinal tract, among the other factors I was talked about, it really, again, becomes, a vicious cycle that you just can't compensate. So even though those people get recommended to take B1, for most of those people, does not work well because they just cannot overcompensate to, fill the demand that B1 thiamine is being used up in the metabolic processes every single day. So it's like a massive sink that just cannot be filled because it's just, the outpour is either equal to or larger than, the inpour. An estimated 80% of alcoholics are literally deficient, clinically deficient in thiamine, and therefore so much more prone to the side effects and conditions that I listed above. And oftentimes is like a chain reaction of domino effect. Thiamine or B6 can be depleted. Just can start with that. Other minerals start coming into the play, other vitamins, and just over time, things can really start going sideways. I deal with a lot of subclinical nutrient deficiencies that are very hard to recognize because the symptoms are different. And when that happens, it can really play a very big trick because the symptoms are so many and they are cross-reactive that it's really hard to pinpoint unless you know what you're looking for. But again, I see that with alcohol all the time. Last thing I want to talk about is alcohol's ability, a very effective ability to inhibit weight loss. And when I say weight loss, I'm talking about the ability for the body to utilize and burn body fat. First of all, popular contrary belief, inability to lose weight with alcohol has nothing to do with caloric consumption. Okay, very few people are sitting there drinking, 2 12-packs a day of beer. Even that is not going to really do anything, relatively speaking. The alcohol, so remember, alcohol is metabolized differently than other nutrients. So that also means that it's a lot more likely, to be one, stored as body fat. So you really can't compensate. But alcohol consumption really disrupts the normal function of the liver, which is definitely responsible for breaking down fat. So if anybody knows lipolysis, the utilization of body fat for energy, what people call fat burning, you understand why when the liver gets inhibited, certain enzymatic actions get inhibited while the body's processing that alcohol, it is unable to utilize the body fat for energy and therefore cause, weight loss. So as long as people consume alcohol, they can't burn body fat. Ultimately, that's what it boils down to, or have a very hard time doing so. The rule of thumb, generally speaking, is that for 1 ounce of ethanol, I'm not talking about 1 ounce per volume, I'm talking about 1 ounce of pure ethanol, whatever the volume ratio of that is, takes about 16 hours for the body to fully metabolize and clear out of the system. Okay. Some people do it faster, depending on the metabolism. Some people obviously do it slower, but generally speaking, it's 14, 16-hour range. So when somebody consumes alcohol, which a lot of people do at night, okay, even so, you might consume, a few beers and a few glasses of wine or even something heavier. So at least for the next 12, 14, up to 16 hours, your body's clearing metabolism. And it's clearing the ethanol out of your system. That means there's no fat burning going on. So yeah, you might be eating clean, you might be dieting, exercising, but you're going to severely retard your ability to be able to burn body fat for energy, if not completely inhibit it. People that have low metabolic function, that have metabolism, mitochondrial energy deficit, and just have mitochondrial dysfunction, which people with chronic disease do by default, they have severely hard time losing body fat with alcohol. And I see, again, people exercise until they're blue in the face every day. The caloric output is far beyond what their input is. And as long as they're consuming alcohol, they're pretty much unable to lose weight. Initially, they'll lose water, they'll lose actually muscle, maybe a little bit of the body fat, but eventually will cease completely to lose any weight. And they wonder why. The issue is also that people lie about their alcohol consumption all the time. Maybe that's just a guilty feeling, I don't know. But when you ask how much they drink, either A, they outright lied, they don't consume much at all, or just on the weekend or special occasions, and or they'll just lie about the volume. They'll say, well, I just got like a glass of wine, but it really ends up being like a half a bottle of wine, not just a glass of wine or a whole bottle of wine, and perhaps something else on top of that. So there's this lying aspect that takes place. And again, I've seen this all the time. So, again, this disruption will lead to the body of focusing on metabolism, the alcohol, instead of really utilizing to burn body fat for energy, which, again, people cannot lose weight while they are on regularly consuming ethanol. It is extremely hard. Yes, some people have the genetic gifts of be able to eat whatever they want and exercise and, lose weight and look great. These are the 0.10011%ers, I guess, of, people out there. Yeah, we all probably know 1 or 2 or 3 of those people, but I've been around long enough. I'm almost 50 now, and I can tell you this, that eventually those people with the great genetics, I have seen them sick up to something, and a lot of times it's something bad. So it's not a question of if they're going to get something. The question is of when something is going to happen. Do not be deceived. Yeah, you will not be fooled. You cannot abuse your body and not pay the price for it. They just do something you have to understand. Just a fact. In addition to losing weight, another thing that I've seen in those 27 years that I've done this, they have been doing this, alcohol by default will lead to poor decision making overall. Okay. And especially when it comes to food choices. So somebody might go to dinner, seen it all the time, and the story will always go like, well, we went to dinner, I just had, steamed, veggies with a little bit of lemon, and I the fish, chicken, or lean steak, excellent, great. And, it's kind of like one drink, because everybody was doing it. I didn't want to be kind of like the oddball, and I didn't want to offend somebody. Great, awesome, okay, but yeah, maybe you can get away with it, once, twice a month, especially as a special occasion. Not a problem, I understand. Perhaps your boss was there, or whatever it might have been. But the reality that ultimately happened eventually is that with that one drink led to 3 or 4 or 5, then sugar goes up, cortisol goes up, blood sugar goes up. A lot of times they go down again afterwards, and they'll start craving. And people around the world with dessert. Here, once you have a little bit, it won't hurt you. They'll have the dessert. Perhaps they'll order something else on the menu later on that it was not supposed to be in their plan, like usually dessert or something pretty bad. And those decisions ultimately end up being really bad and setting the person up for failure. I see this again all the time. And remember, guys, I'm speaking here from experience. I'm not sitting here theorizing or based on what research directly says, but on personal professional experience over the years. Some people might disagree, and that's fine. I often get, the argument, well, there's a lot of studies that show that alcohol consumption can be really good for the heart. First of all, those studies are done on wine, not hard liquor or beer. And 2, they are by default driven by the wine industry, which is a massive, huge industry, as everybody knows. And again, the studies are done in settings that has nothing to do with the ethanol, but despite of the ethanol, because of the social engagement of, consuming that alcohol. And there are always usually 1 or 2 drinks. So again, for somebody who is very healthy, generally speaking, have no problems, they can do that and get away with it for a very long time. Is there people who genetically are very gifted and perhaps they might be 100 years old and still getting a glass of wine? I never met any. I never even met anybody who in their early 90s who were really, truly healthy and vibrant and flourishing. They have really even consumed that. If anything, I've met the opposite. There's numerous people actually on Facebook, anywhere from 90 to 106, I think now, that have either completely eliminated alcohol for this reason or never drank in the first place. Another argument is that, well, red wine has resveratrol. Well, the resveratrol is contained in a single bottle of wine that's consumed, assuming that's good quality of wine, you'll probably get in half a capsule or a soft gel of a good high quality supplement of resveratrol, which is actually very highly absorbable, very, very good for you. So the whole notion and argument of, well, I'm consuming wine because it has resveratrol and resveratrol is good for my heart, that's nonsense. There's really no validity to that whatsoever. It's just an excuse to feed your addiction or to keep doing what you're doing. So with that being said, again, this is where I stand on alcohol. Alcohol has definitely a lot of issues with it. I see it in my practice all the time. And that is a prerequisite that I always tell people, if you want to work with me, ethanol's got to go. If not, we're not doing this. I'll not take them as patients. I just won't. And the big reason for that is because it does inhibit healing. And it does inhibit healing by impairs, first of all, the pancreas' ability to secrete insulin, potentially leading to elevated blood sugar levels, which it does. Over time, high blood sugar will lead to narrowing of the blood vessels, inflammation, advanced stage glycation end products, and this reduces oxygen and blood flow to the skin, and to other organs, and will slow healing. That's why you have, people that are diabetic, they have problems with amputations and, neuropathy all the time, reducing the levels of certain components of the immune system, which are essential to healing. Ethanol does that. Drinking large amounts of alcohol will reduce the amount of white blood cells called macrophages that chew up the bacteria and debris in your blood, in your body. Again, important part of the immune system. Making bones weaker. People trying to heal a bone, people that are, have osteoporosis, osteopenia, sarcopenia, which is muscle wasting, it inhibits that because one, it makes them weaker, but also stops the bone from healing properly and forming properly while the consumption of the alcohol. So that causes direct damage to the bones, including breakage from falls, obviously affecting hormone production and impairing vitamin absorption and mineral absorption to a point. which all these things affect bone development and proper bone health. So therefore, raising risks of osteopenia and osteoporosis. That you have seen all the time. You do. So alcohol will inhibit proper healing. Anyway, this is pretty much it. I tried to keep it short. Unfortunately, I couldn't. There's just quite a bit to say, but I hope you guys got something out of this. If you guys have any questions, please reach out to us. We're at DrPND.com. You can go on there, get a free consultation. There's no obligation or cost to you. We can talk about your issues, and if there's any way we can help, we'll gladly do so. I hope you guys have a great and wonderful week. And until next time, this is your host, Dr. PND.